Hey Graham, it's Brandon. I hope I would be able to reach you, but I guess I'm not able to, so I know this is going to come as kind of a surprise, at least to you it isn't to me, but I killed someone today. I killed my girlfriend. Well, she's supposed to be my girlfriend, but she cheated on me, and I just...
Do you know what happens when a tragic event unfolds and social media becomes both the witness and the weapon? Have you ever wondered how the internet can both amplify a tragedy and further victimize those left behind? The murder of Bianca Devins, a 17-year-old from Utica, New York, is one of the most chilling cases that exposes the dark side of digital spaces. Her brutal death, followed by the disturbing circulation of graphic images across social media platforms, raised serious questions about the ethics of online behavior, the responsibility of tech companies, and the exploitation of victims. But how could a young woman's life be so violently taken, and why did the images of her death spread like wildfire across the internet? What does this case reveal about the dangers of online harassment, toxic masculinity, and the lack of safeguards in our digital world? Join us as we are diving into the heartbreaking story of Bianca Devins, where questions of justice, online responsibility, and the fight for change continue to linger.
When Utica police arrived on scene Sunday morning shortly after 7, they say that the female victim was already deceased. This afternoon, police tell me that they believe that the suspect left this graffiti message on the ground saying, "May you never forget me," close to where he murdered his girlfriend in his SUV at the dead end of Post Street in East Utica.
The murder of Bianca Michelle Devins, a 17-year-old from Utica, New York, on July 14th, 2019, was a chilling case that gained extensive media attention for its connection to social media. Bianca was killed by Brandon Andrew Clark, an acquaintance whom she had an on-again, off-again relationship with. The relationship had turned fatal for her. While Clark was described as a close family friend by Devins' sister, other people felt that he was exploitative and possessive. The crime occurred after an argument between the two, allegedly triggered when Clark saw Devins kissing another man. This sparked his violent rage. Clark murdered Devins and, after the killing, took photos of her body. He shared these graphic images on Instagram and Discord, where they quickly spread across the internet, attracting mockery and shock. Devins' death then becomes a symbol of what some call the dangers of social media, the latter taking on a role in violent crimes after their commission. The response from social media was slow to develop, further prompting criticism at their lack of decisiveness in removing the content. Clark tried to take his own life after committing the murder and survived. He was later charged with a crime of second-degree murder. Clark pleaded guilty to the crime and was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. His trial brought attention to issues of digital exploitation, privacy violations, and the ethics of social media platforms in handling graphic content. Bianca Michelle Devins was a 17-year-old from Utica, New York. On July 14, 2019, Bianca's life was brutally taken. Bianca was a student who was passionate about psychology and had ambitions to study at Mohawk Valley Community College. A teen who had battled mental health issues such as depression, anxiety, borderline personality disorder, and post-traumatic stress disorder, Bianca's struggles were known to her loved ones. She had been receiving mental health treatment intermittently throughout her teenage years. Bianca often sought solace in online communities where she had formed connections. Unfortunately, she was also being harassed by the members of the incel, involuntary celibate, movement, for which she endured considerable distress for 2 years. Although the incel movement had nothing to do with the murder in the eyes of law enforcement, Bianca's case became one of the archetypes of dark sides of online interactions, where harassment and violence often mix. Brandon Andrew Clark was the man behind Bianca's murder. Clark was a 21-year-old New Yorker, and his troubled childhood included watching his father hold his mother at knife point for hours. This was probably an incident that affected his psychological development. However, these past traumas did not define Clark when he first met Bianca's family. According to Bianca's mother, Kimberly Devins, he was very nice. However, their relationship was not at all straightforward, and it soon came to light that Clark had strong emotional and possessive feelings for Bianca, which Bianca did not have for him. Bianca had informed her mother that she had made it very clear to Clark that she didn't want a romantic relationship with him, but Clark did not seem to respect that boundary. Even though some of Bianca's family members said that Clark was a close family friend, others were concerned that he would exploit her. One of Bianca's friends felt that Clark was manipulating her because he provided her with drugs so that she could spend time with him. This situation complicated their connection further. The relationship was complicated and eventually toxic, since Clark's possessiveness increased with time. The fact that Bianca was constantly observed in her virtual interactions and relationships, including with Clark, contributed to the inevitable disintegration of their relationship and ultimately led to Bianca's death. Bianca's last day on Earth ended on July 13, 2019. Bianca, along with Clark and another friend Alex, went to watch Canadian-American singer-songwriter Nicole Dollanganger perform live in New York City. After the performance, Clark, Bianca, and Alex went back to Utica, where, according to sources, the argument started when Bianca was said to kiss Alex. According to insiders, Bianca's kissing Alex enraged Clark to extreme violence against her. It seems that Clark is a very jealous lover who felt ownership of Bianca. Some moment of the fight saw Clark grab by his seat an elongated knife that he kept secreted, with which he sliced Bianca's neck, killing her, in the process almost separating her head. It was an early morning date, July 14, 2019. Following killing Bianca, Clark did not disappear, but continued committing sickening actions. He left her body in the car, where he built a bonfire and played the song Test Drive by Joji, a chilling soundtrack to the aftermath of his crime. The psychological detachment and bizarre calmness with which Clark approached the murder were unsettling, suggesting a calculated and premeditated act. He then dialed a series of calls to his family, one of which is considered almost like a suicide note, where he claimed guilty of the murder and vowed to take his life. Clark's family, frightened by his call, reported to the authorities.
To replay this message, press 4. To get...
Hey, Graham, it's Brandon. I hope I would be able to reach you, but I guess I'm not able to, so I know this is going to come as kind of a surprise, at least to you it isn't to me, but I killed someone today. I killed my girlfriend. Well, she's supposed to be my girlfriend, but she cheated on me, and I just... There's going to be there's a murder.
Okay. On Post Street, you said?
The end of Post Street, yes.
Okay. Very end of Post Street. Okay, what's your name?
My name is Brandon. The victim is Bianca Michelle Devins.
Yeah. What are you wearing?
It doesn't matter.
Okay, well, I just want to talk to you, okay?
Yeah, I know you want to talk to me. I know how your job works. You have to keep me on the line, but it's not happening, okay?
And police investigation was instigated in no time. Murder did not remain secret for too long, as Clark broadcast graphic pictures on the internet of Bianca's body. He shared these horrifying pictures on the Discord messaging site, where it received mixed reactions of shock, disgust, and mockery. The post, which had a caption that read, "Sorry fuckers, you're gonna have to find somebody else to orbit," revealed how Clark had utterly disregarded the dignity and life of Bianca. He even made a video of the murder, and this added more horror to the situation. By 7 a.m. on July 14, 2019, several people in Discord alerted the police. The police took swift action concerning the incident. Among the leads they received were a call by Clark himself, who confirmed his name and the nature of the crime he had committed while calling emergency services. Clark reported that he had planned to perform a suicide following the murder-suicide, where he stated his name as Brandon and the victim's name as Bianca Michelle Devins. "I'm not going to stay on the phone for long because I still need to do the suicide part of the murder-suicide." When law enforcement arrived at the scene, Clark had already stabbed himself in the neck in an attempt to end his life. He was found lying on a green tarp that covered Bianca's body, and he continued to post photos of the gruesome scene online. A suicide note was found that read, "May you never forget me." This again explains Clark's need to be remembered and thus infamous. Clark had anticipated the murder when he arrived carrying the knife and his recording equipment, added the police on the fact of the murder plan. Within 2 days of murder, the detectives pieced up Clark's sequence of actions and reasoning. He was found to have conducted several very disturbing online searches, including how to locate the carotid artery and how to incapacitate or kill someone. Investigators concluded that Clark had planned the murder and may have been driven by a desire for recognition or fame, as suggested by his actions and statements following the crime. He was charged with second-degree murder and later pled guilty to the crime. A vigil was held July 15, 2019, a day after Bianca Devins was tragically killed. The city rallied to mourn her and express its support for Bianca's family. 4 days later, July 19, 2019, her funeral was held. More mourning and solidarity followed, as on July 2020, a second vigil was held in memoriam for Bianca, as well as to bring attention to the dangers of online harassment. Moreover, a fashion and art show displaying Bianca's artwork was organized on February 14, 2020, in appreciation of her creativity and the difference she made for people around her. The community also reached out to the students in the district by providing them with week-long counseling sessions with the students of Thomas R. Proctor High School, as Bianca used to attend school there. As if that were not enough, to honor her even more, the Adirondack Bank Center at the Utica Memorial Auditorium was bathed in pink light to show the love and support the community had for Bianca. The grandfather of Bianca thanked the community of Utica for their full support during the painful time. As the community rallied around Bianca's family, the world was also deeply affected by the disturbing spread of images of her lifeless body on social media. The crime, which was already tragic in its nature, became even more painful as Bianca's murder was shared widely across social platforms like Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Those images were posted online by her murderer, Brandon Clark, on different online forums and social networks. They quickly picked up traction on websites like 4chan, in which users were rejoicing in a homicide, dubbing it another 4chan murder. The same posts were found on incels.co and 8chan, where users showed appreciation for Clark's actions in many ways as well, further establishing a norm of violence within these subcultures online. On Twitter, a hashtag number #RipBianca became very briefly trendy, and other accounts announced that it had graphic images of Bianca's dead body in order to get as many likes and followers as they possibly could. Other illegitimate sites even established online fundraising operations for Bianca. And in retaliation over the protests in the online platforms about the prevalence of these nasty images, tracker Pink Clouds for Bianca went viral and online. This movement aimed to reclaim the narrative and fight the circulation of disturbing images by sharing photos of pink clouds, which symbolized a more peaceful and positive tribute to Bianca. However, the fight to remove these images from the internet proved to be difficult, as the initial online discussion surrounding the murder was marred by misinformation. Several rumors were spread around, and the social media users tried to describe the motives behind the crime without knowing the entire context. In fact, several tweets from key figures incorrectly described Clark as an incel, since no concrete evidence confirmed this. The speculations around the case ran rampant on Twitter, YouTube, and Reddit platforms as people tried to piece together a history for Bianca and speculate on her relationship with Clark. The information only added to the trauma experienced by the case's different characters, especially Bianca's family, as her body photos were shared repeatedly and left deep emotional scars for many viewers. Criminal justice professor James Densley warned that exposure to these images could cause severe trauma, and the effects were felt not only by the general public, but by those closest to Bianca.
So why would you want to shake hands with the camera?
Well, Brandon, I'll tell you what. It's okay, take your time. You can ask me and I can ask you, but so you would like to talk to me then? Yes? Yes? No?
Sure.
I have to get through this and then we can have a full conversation.
Her stepfather reported having flashbacks to the images of his stepdaughter's body, while her sister revealed that she often saw the images in her mind before going to sleep, unable to escape the haunting visuals. Bianca's mother, Kimberly Devins, was horrified by the fact that the pictures have left a profound psychological impact on any viewer, saying that many people had been scarred for life and suffering from PTSD as a result of having seen the pictures. As a final point, even the musician whose music Bianca listened to asked publicly to take away these images, and people stopped posting them as they felt devastated about what was happening emotionally. With such an unprecedented rise of sick images in circulation on social media, action began being taken. The two giant companies of Instagram and Facebook deleted Clark's account and even went so far as to attempt to contain the spreading photos. The Facebook added pictures of the murder into the digital fingerprint database, also blacklisted the hashtag #YesJuliet because it had become linked with Bianca's death photos. It even closed the Discord server used by Clark to upload pictures. It has taken away all such contents from its service. But in this case, it has been severely criticized for Instagram's delay action. Users who reported the images on the platform found that they were initially not considered violations of community guidelines. The criticism grew as some of the images remained accessible for as long as 4 days on Instagram, and even after several months, Bianca's mother claimed that the images could still be found on Facebook. Prosecutors who tried Clark added later that the images remained available online for months after Bianca was killed. In fact, nearly 2 years later, Bianca's sister said that the images were still being sent to her. This grim state underlines significant shortcomings by social media companies in handling the content. Experts in digital forensics, such as Hani Farid, criticized the delayed response of Instagram as well as other platforms. Farid thus argued that in this regard, the companies indeed had all technological tools at hand to act suitably on their spread, and argued that in action, it is close to a form of negligence. Even with the legal considerations of non-crime liability regarding the platform's acts, the world began to harbor the view that they could indeed have done much better in checking the going-on trauma through this circulation of pictures. Farid's allegations resonated with the anguish that most people felt in the sense that individuals in the tech industry were not taking responsibility while safeguarding people and their families from abuse on the internet. By July 15, 2019, Bianca Devins' murder had put the world in a frenzy, gaining great publicity and becoming one of the most publicized cases related to the social media filming of the crime. Devins, who had 2,000 followers on Instagram at the time of her death, gained 75,000 new followers in the days after the murder. This increased attention was followed by reports that overstated her online popularity, but it was obvious that the nature of the crime, especially the documentation and spread of the event on social media, would have a lasting impact on the discourse surrounding digital platforms and violent imagery. The case, in a pretty short time span, became reflective material with numerous attempts to attach significance to the tragedy. Melissa Jeltsin of HuffPost observed that shortly after the massacre, everyone wanted it to mean something. Another columnist for the Post-Standard reported that Elizabeth Doran said of the case, "It follows too many disturbingly familiar narrative lines of how abusive male partners terrorize females they are to love." Experts in crime and criminology, including CNET's Queenie Wong and James Densley, said that this was a symptom of more far-reaching issues with the way social media handle violent images, where more accountability from platforms would be required in doing so. The killing was celebrated widely as a case of domestic violence and pointed to how toxic masculinity may have been involved in Clark's violent acts. Other analysts linked misogyny to the context of Devins' death, pointing out how societal pressures on men to maintain dominance and control in relationships might have affected Clark's behavior. The murder also raised troubling questions about how social media platforms, particularly Instagram and Discord, responded, or failed to respond, to the graphic images of Devins' body that were shared widely across various networks. This act of spreading violent imagery was a stark manifestation of the effects of online harassment, especially when it is fed by such noxious ideologies. Harvard University's Evelyn Dauk compared the spread of photos of Devins with the online spread of footage from the 2019 Christchurch mosque shootings, focusing on how internet culture feeds and normalizes such heinous acts. In both cases, the culprits seem motivated by an obsession with seeking attention and generating shock value and spreading graphic content, thus further deepening the dark nexus between internet culture and violence. Secondly, Clark and the Christchurch shooter similarly chanted, "Subscribe to PewDiePie," after committing each of their atrocities, indicating an eerie connection between internet virality and violent actions. Clark's post-murder behavior was interpreted as a means of asserting control over Devins, and his desire to dominate and manipulate her was present even after she was dead. His mother and experts noted that his behavior showed a desire to reclaim power, perhaps through the mechanism of emasculation. Allison Margansky, criminology expert, said Clark's behavior aligned with other violent male offenders, and she ventured that he must have felt an urge to demonstrate his masculinity through violence. This, coupled with his deliberate effort to capture and show the murder, was an extension of control in his motivation. Ultimately, the murder of Bianca Devins brought to light issues surrounding toxic masculinity, the pervasiveness of harassment online, and disturbing repercussions of social media in elevating violent actions. On July 29, 2019, Brandon Clark pleaded not guilty to second-degree murder regarding the death of Bianca Devins. This first plea was then followed by another charge in August 2019, when Clark was discovered with a shiv, a sharpened toothbrush, while in his cell. This led to further charges of promoting prison contraband. At this point, Devins' mother claimed that Clark had written a letter to a friend, boasting about his crime and how it felt to take a life. According to the letter, Clark said that he could not tolerate the thought of Devins moving on and away from him. This letter played a pivotal role in the explanation of the mentality of the perpetrator and exposed an extremely possessive and toxic mentality that contributed to his violent action. Clark pleaded guilty on February 10, 2020, the eve of the trial. His sentencing was initially scheduled for April 7th, but it was delayed due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. On June 2, 2020, Clark attempted to withdraw his guilty plea, alleging that his attorney had failed him. However, the motion was denied, as Clark had already admitted his guilt. The case was finalized, and the judgment was presented in writing on October 30, 2020, with the case being called for hearing on September 30th.
Years now, I've sat in my cell and I've wondered what I'm going to say when it finally comes time for me to speak to the people that I've hurt. And it's never been enough. It's never been adequate, I felt, to really convey my emotions and to apologize. How do you meaningfully apologize for doing something so horrible and so irreversible? And that's the worst part, is that I can't take it back. I want to. I wish I could. I would give my life in a heartbeat to Bianca if I could. And I can't. Every day I wake up and I wonder how she would have spent that day if she were still here. Every day I wish that I could do more than just wonder. And I hate myself for what I did to her. I don't know why. I don't understand how I could do something like that. I don't even know who I was that day, and it disgusts me. I remember when I first met Bianca, how much I adored her and how much I just wanted to spend time with her, and for that adoration to turn into something so evil, and it's like a nightmare. Every day I wish I could wake up and just have it not be real, have it not be me.
Clark was eventually sentenced to life imprisonment for 25 years on March 16, 2020. Although he had expressed regret for his actions, the severity of the crime and its emotional toll to Devins' family meant his remorse did not reduce the levels of anger and grief that existed around the case. Following the murder of Bianca Devins, her mother, in unison with former Congressman Anthony Brindisi, pushed social media companies for stronger actions about the spread of graphic content. Devins' family was particularly frustrated by the lack of accountability and the slow response from Instagram to remove disturbing images of Bianca's body. Brindisi called on the Federal Trade Commission to investigate the social media platforms for their role in the spread of the images and for failing to enforce appropriate content moderation policies. Instagram reportedly promised to conduct an audit of their practices in response to Brindisi's requests, but by December 2019, Devins' mother had yet to receive the promised findings. In September 2020, the family of Brindisi and Devins introduced a new bill called Bianca's Law. This bill would make it mandatory for social media platforms with over $10 million in revenue and more than 100,000 monthly active users to have dedicated offices and specialists to identify and remove violent content violating the platform's moderation standards. This legislation was aimed at holding social media responsible for the content being shared on the sites, specifically violent imagery that may further harm the victims and their families. Another bill would place criminal and civil penalties on people who intentionally distributed images of crime, victims with the purpose of glorifying the crime or harassing the victim's family. These legislative efforts were an attempt to address the widespread issues regarding the circulation of violent or explicit images online, which in cases like Devins' murder could traumatize both the public and the families involved. By January 2022, Bianca's law had gained traction and was passed by the New York State Assembly. The bill criminalizes the act of posting, sharing, or publishing personal images that degrade or abuse the victim, especially under circumstances where the intent is to cause harm or humiliation. The law was signed into effect by Governor Kathy Hochul in December 2022. The passage of Bianca's law marked a significant step in holding digital platforms accountable for the misuse of their services to harm individuals and their families. This law also indicated an increased awareness of the need for legal and social change to curb the ever-increasing incidences of online violence and harassment. Aside from the legal campaign, the family of Devins wanted to make a memorial of Bianca. They established a scholarship in her name to aid students in studying psychology at Mohawk Valley Community College, a course Bianca was interested in taking up. In early 2020, her friends and family organized the Bigala, a fundraising event that celebrated Bianca's life, showcased her artwork, and raised money for the scholarship fund. The event was a poignant reminder of Bianca's passions and the bright future she had hoped to build, which was tragically cut short by Clark's actions. But the fight for justice did not end there. In July 2021, Devins' family filed a lawsuit against the Oneida County District Attorney's Office. They accused the office of distributing child pornography after learning that the District Attorney's Office had shared footage of Bianca's death, as well as intimate materials, including videos of her having sex and nude photos from her phone. These materials were reportedly shared with producers of documentaries on the case and were provided in response to a FOIL Freedom of Information law request made by a YouTube blogger. The family's suit raised serious concerns about the ethical handling of sensitive material by legal authorities and further highlighted the emotional trauma caused by the circulation of such private and personal content. The lawsuit highlighted the urgent need for greater sensitivity and responsibility in dealing with the digital traces of crime victims. In the case of Bianca Devins, the images of her death were shared by Clark immediately after the murder, with little regard for the suffering they would cause her family. It is painful to reflect on how social media platforms continue to spread the pictures of these young women, making digital spaces not protect the victims and their families from further hurt long after the crime has occurred. The family has pursued their fight through law battles, legislative processes, and through a scholarship bearing Bianca's name. To this day, these efforts are a tribute to a much better future, to a future wherein online platforms shall be held liable for the injuries that violent content inflicts upon society, and that the memory of their loved one will be treated with respect for that life and for her legacy.
Interested in Barbies and playing wizards. As we grew up, she had gotten into reading and drawing. I was amazed at what she would create using pen and paper, and the amount of books she would read in 1 week left me in awe. I recall going to the bookstore with her so many times, it's like it was a second home. This one memory in particular sticks with me to this day, as if I had just lived it. Bianca and I opened the doors to Barnes & Noble's with infinite possibilities. Bianca walked through the bookstore knowing exactly where she needed to go, I following right behind. After reading many book covers, she had chosen her next novel, even though she was only 12. Of course, I was only 10, so I most definitely did not want to be reading teen fiction. I bought a How to Draw Anime Figures book because I so desperately wanted to learn how she did it, and I wanted to do it with her. I wanted her to teach me. We bought our books, and of course had to get our tea from Starbucks, then headed home. I opened that book up as soon as we arrived, attempted, realized I was nowhere near as talented as my older sister was, and then closed the book. I thought to myself, We have our whole lives for her to teach me, and I never learned I was wrong. Fast forward about 4 years, when I was the age of 14 and Bianca was 16. She struggled with mental illness since a very young age. I was just not aware until she started getting admitted into psychiatric hospitals. I then realized she was not happy with her life due to mental illnesses she was diagnosed with. I was scared for her, as any person would be, knowing that someone so close to them was going through one of the hardest challenges to face. A challenge that the person themselves cannot even justify or begin to know how to get better. A challenge which makes them wonder if life is even worth living. I was afraid I was going to lose my sister, and the thought haunted me constantly. However, my mother, Kim Devins, did not give up.
Bianca Devins' death has been a source of great sorrow, but her death has started some very necessary conversations about the ethical responsibilities that social media companies have, the harm that is caused by online harassment, and the legal frameworks that are required to protect the victims and their families in this increasingly digital world. Bianca Devins' tragic death has left her family, community, and even the broader conversation surrounding online harassment and the ethics of social media with a significant impact. The murder of Bianca came to be perpetrated in a setting where her images had been graphically and widely diffused across media, pointing to the disturbing ways digital spaces were used to not only harm more, but also terrorize victims' families. Moreover, the display of images on online communities showcasing her death heightened the pain of those already wronged by it. This also made the emotional impact of having to view such images against their will even more exacerbated by the fact that platforms such as Instagram were slow to act. After Bianca's death, her family was one of the strongest voices for justice and reform. Their efforts, from the introduction of Bianca's Law to their legal battles against the Oneida County District Attorney's Office, speak to a call for better regulations and greater responsibility on the part of social media companies. Through the passage of Bianca's Law in 2022, New York State has made an important stride in closing some of the legal and ethical loopholes that permit these images to freely flow into public space. The law prohibits posting degrading or abusive images of people, preventing exploitation and the type of trauma that Bianca's family went through. Bianca's family channeled her pain into a positive direction. They established a scholarship in her name. They also started an event to help them remember Bianca. Through these efforts, they have ensured that Bianca's legacy is not defined solely by her tragic death, but also by her passion for life and her aspirations for the future. The scholarship serves as a beacon of hope for others, reminding us that even in the face of unimaginable loss, there can be an opportunity for growth and healing. While the legal procedures may bring a sort of justice into Bianca Devins' life, her story remains an apparent example of perils hiding in the vast digital landscape. Therefore, there is a need to collectively protect the victims and their families, bring responsibility to the platforms, and ensure that no one has to suffer through this kind of exploitation and trauma again. The pursuit of justice won't end with Bianca, but continues with victims whose stories may get lost in digital noise. Advancing advocacy and reform will hopefully lead to a future where victims' dignity is respected and their stories are told with compassion and care.
All right, I hope in some way his words this morning have given some small amount of solace to the family. I think it's much better than it was back in October when we held that hearing. So there's nothing more I can say. It will be the sentence of this court as to the defendant's conviction for murder in the second degree. That he will be sentenced to an indeterminate sentence of imprisonment and shall have a minimum term of 25 years and a maximum term of life imprisonment. In addition to that, the court will impose a mandatory $325 state surcharge, a $50 DNA surcharge. The record should also reflect that on the date of February 10th of 2020, when Mr. Clark entered his plea of guilty, he also waived his right to appeal this conviction and sentence. A copy of that waiver of appeal will be given to Mr. Clark this morning, and I am not going to repeat those rights at this time. All right, now we'll close this court session.
That's all for this video. We hope you have found this video informative and interesting. What are your thoughts about this case? Let us know in the comment section. Make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that bell icon for more interesting videos like this. Thank you for watching our video.